Hello, and welcome back to a brief tour of LIDA. I'm Steve Strain, a researcher from the CCRG at the University of Memphis. In our last video, we discussed the fundamental goals of the LIDA model of cognition. In addition to outlining an architecture that depicts the ways in which mental mechanisms and processes can be assembled into minds, the model provides the elements of a language for a narrative description of mental processes. We also outlined in broad strokes the methodology of the LIDA approach, which is composed of a science fork and an engineering fork. The science fork seeks to build simulations of biological minds, while the engineering fork seeks to apply our understanding of biological minds to the implementation of intelligent software agents. Having given an overview of LIDA's basic approach and goals for the study of mind, let's take a moment to list the two most important concepts at the core of the LIDA model. Each of these concepts is quite complex, and much more could be said about them than I have time to say here. I'll do my best to summarize them quickly. The cognitive cycle is probably the single most important concept in the model. A cognitive cycle is an atomic building block for cognitive processes. The idea of the cognitive cycle can be related back to the idea that the mind is a control structure for an autonomous agent, iteratively answering the question, what do I do next? Another basis for the cognitive cycle is suggested by the so-called perception-action cycle. It begins with a sensory event and ends with an atomic action, which we will call a behavior. Based on the case of humans, we like to think of a cycle as being a few hundred milliseconds in length. On our website, you can find our 2011 PLOS One paper by Thomas Model and others for a review of the neuroscientific and psychological evidence behind this claim. Okay then, so a key hypothesis of the LIDA model is that cognition is composed of a sequence of rapid cognitive cycles. However, since brains keep taking in new information while continuing to process older information, these cycles needn't be strictly serial. In other words, cycles can overlap, meaning that the next cycle can begin before the previous cycle is complete. It's important to keep in mind that although we referred to the cognitive cycle as a kind of atom, it possesses a rich inner structure. In a later video, we will get a better idea of this inner structure when we review the LIDA diagram, which contains a graphic representation of a generic mind's architecture. There is much more that can be said about cognitive cycles. For the present, the most important point is that the cognitive cycle is one of the two central concepts of the LIDA model.